So, late 2025, a massive wave of protest sweeps across Iran. We're talking the largest in years. And it all started with something as basic as the price of bread, but it quickly morphed into a battle for the very soul of the nation. So, in this explainer, we're going to break down how it all happened. This didn't kick off with some big political manifesto or anything like that. It really began with a raw, fundamental cry of desperation. Think about it. By the end of 2025, for millions of Iranians, the simple act of putting food on the table, well, it had become a nearly impossible struggle. And that brings us to the central question, right? How did these protests, which were all about economic hardship, transform so incredibly fast into a nationwide uprising that was demanding the complete overthrow of the Islamic Republic itself? Okay, to really get this, we've got to look at the state of the nation right before everything just erupted. We're talking about a country that was truly at a breaking point. This number right here, 1.45 million, this tells a massive part of the story. In December 2025, that's how many Iranian rials you needed for just $1. I mean, that's a devastating historic low. And for regular people, this wasn't just some abstract number on a screen. No, it meant their life savings were effectively wiped out, and the cost of literally everything was just skyrocketing. And this quote, it just perfectly captures the mood on the ground back in November. Someone said, "There is not much distance left until absolute hunger." This wasn't about, just tightening your belt. This was a slide towards what a lot of people felt was imminent starvation. Okay, so we've seen that human desperation. Now let's dig into the cold, hard data that really fueled this fire, because the numbers, wow, they are truly stark. Yeah, this table from the World Bank paints a really grim picture. And what's absolutely crucial to see here is the trajectory. The whole economy wasn't just slowing down. It was projected to go into reverse, from positive growth to a sharp contraction. Just try to imagine that. Your country's economy is shrinking, while at the same time, the price of everything you need to buy is forecast to jump by over 50%. This wasn't just a downturn. It was a perfect storm, and it was pushing millions more people right to the edge of absolute poverty. And this is what those big, scary numbers actually look like in daily life. One resident laid out this absolutely heartbreaking timeline of how food was just disappearing from their family's diet. We're talking about staples that used to be common, now becoming unaffordable luxuries. First, meat went, then dairy, then even chicken and fruit. The dinner table was literally shrinking right before their eyes. So, okay, the economic hardship was definitely the spark. But that spark landed on a massive field of very, very dry political tinder. Let's take a look at how that hardship turns into a full-blown uprising. You can pretty much trace the entire story of this uprising just by listening to what the protesters were chanting in the streets. It started with this frustration over the regime's priorities, Slogans like, "Neither Gaza nor Lebanon, my life for Iran." But that frustration, it quickly boiled over into direct defiance. That's when you started hearing "death to the dictator." And from there, it ultimately became a revolutionary call for a completely new system. Some were even demanding the return of the pre-revolutionary monarchy, the Pahlavi dynasty. And this is so crucial to remember. This anger did not just appear out of a vacuum. The 2025 protests were really standing on the shoulders of that massive woman life freedom movement from 2022. That uprising, sparked by the tragic death of Mahsa Amini, had already shattered the wall of fear for so many people and had cemented this deep, lasting distrust in the government. And in the years leading right up to these protests, the state had been seriously escalating its use of repression. I mean, executions reportedly doubled in 2025 compared to just the year before, reaching the highest level in nearly 40 years. Activists were arguing that this was a very clear strategy: instill fear and crush any and all forms of dissent. So the question is, how did all this anger, all this history, build into a nationwide movement? Well, a timeline of just the first week shows how remarkably fast everything escalated. It all kicked off pretty quietly, actually, with shopkeepers closing their doors in Tehran on December 28th. But just within days, that silent protest got amplified by the voices of university students. And then, by New Year's Eve, the state's response turned deadly. We started getting the first reports of live ammunition being used. And this created this tragic, vicious cycle, right? The funerals for the people who were killed, they became the new flashpoints for even bigger protests. And in just 1 week, the fire had spread to over 20 cities. Behind the timeline, behind all the politics, there was a brutal, brutal human cost. These are just a few of the names of those killed in that first week alone. Darius Ansari, Amir Hassam Khudayarifard, a 15-year-old boy, Mustafa, a 22-year-old woman, Sagar Damati. These weren't just statistics. They were real people, the tangible, tragic price of the state's response. And it's really important to note that there was an information war happening at the exact same time. The government would often claim that some of the people killed were actually members of its own security forces. But in many cases, like with Amir Hassam Khudayarifard, family members and eyewitnesses publicly came out and completely refuted those claims, insisting they were unarmed protesters. So as the crisis deepened, the world was watching very closely. And this standoff, well, it quickly took on a big geopolitical dimension. And you can see the totally clashing narratives perfectly in these two statements. On one side, you have Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, basically drawing a line in the sand. He separates protesters from rioters and vows to crush the rioters. But then, on the other side, you've got U.S. President Donald Trump issuing this direct and really unusually explicit warning of intervention, which just raised the international stakes dramatically. And it wasn't just the top leaders either. A whole spectrum of other voices weighed in. Iran's own president admitted how severe the economic pain was. You had jailed reformists calling for a fundamental change to the whole system. Exiled Nobel laureates were condemning the violence. And the U.S. State Department was urging restraint. It was really this chorus of concern, condemnation, and calls for change coming from both inside and outside the country. And so, we're left with this ultimate question. The events of 2025 brought Iran to this incredibly critical crossroads, pitting the raw, visceral desperation of its people against the iron will of an unyielding state. The outcome of that collision? Well, it's still shaping the future of not just a nation, but an entire region.